Okay, so this is the project. We can click on our navigational items. It's going to remove and add the class of active to them. If we make this smaller at a specific point, it's going to remove the navigational items. Always make this smaller. We can change this to 400. Then it's going to remove the navigational items, and it's going to add our button or collapse button. If we click on the button, it's going to open up the navigational items here. If we click and it's also going to change the toggle button. It's going to change this icon. And if we go back here, then it's going to make our navigational items disappear again. Okay, so if we increase the screen size, it's going to make them disappear. Well, good morning, everyone. As you can see, it is morning where I'm at. And I woke up this morning and thought to myself, I haven't created a responsive navbar using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript in a very long time. So I thought to myself, let's create one. Okay, the code will be down in the description below, so please check it out if you wish to follow along or code along. And to get started, just create an empty folder and let's get started with our index.html file. Let's create a boilerplate, plate, Shift and 1. If this doesn't work for you, then I did create a video that fixes exactly this problem. So let's go ahead, let's type in here responsive for the title, responsive navbar. I am also going to use font awesome for this. So let's go ahead, let's go to font awesome and let's copy in the CDN. Oh wait, not from here. Font awesome CDN and CDN. Just search for this in Google. You should land here and this should be your CDN. So just copy the entire link. Okay, so copy URL. No, wait, copy the link and pasted it in above your title. Okay, this is done. Let's also create a CSS file. Let's call this nav.css and let's also include it in our navigation in our index.html. So link and let's link up our nav.css file. And last but not least, a nav.js file. I'm almost working like in components in React. Let's do here console log string of nav. And now we can open this up using live server. I'm obviously using Visual Studio Code. So right click, open with live server, and we should see, come on, pop up. There we go. Close up our CDN, and there it is. There's nothing. So let's type in here you know what, I'm going to create here header. Above the header tag, I'm going to create a nav tag and then an ID of top-nav. And the header down here, I'm going to wrap into a dot container, and that's basically it. So I'm going to take the header, move it up, and type in here a h1 with the class of title, and that's it. Now for the title, I'm going to type in the same thing, so I'm just going to copy in what we have up here in the title. Let's paste this one in here, and there we go. There's our title. Underneath our title, so after the h1, I'm going to create an h4. Let's call it subtitle, and let's type in here using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, of course. JavaScript. So let's leave this for now, and let's go ahead and start working on our navigation. So within the nav tags, let's go ahead and create a .navbar -logo. Now the navbar logo will contain two things. It's going to contain the logo itself and a toggle button, which is going to toggle our navbar to be shown or not. So let's create those two. First, I'm going to create an anchor tag with a class of navbar -brand, and this is going to go nowhere. And for the text, I'm going to just type in here, let's say Norbert BM. And right after this anchor tag, I'm going to create a button tag. This is going to have the class of navbar toggler, because as I said, this button is going to actually toggle our navbar to be shown or to be hidden in different situations. Now for the button itself, I'm going to use font awesome. So let's go ahead and type in here a icon tag with the class fa-solid and another class of fa-bars. Okay, let's hit save, and it didn't work. Let's hit save, and there we go. You should see this if your CDN, you know what, let me just zoom in a bit for now. If your CDN is correctly linked up, then you should see this fa-solid bars. So when we're going to click this bar, the fa-solid bars, this should show our nav. And then when we're going to hide it, we're going to use another button. But we're going to take care of this using JavaScript later on. Now, next, let's take care of the navbar content itself. And what exactly should this navbar toggler activate. So right after our Navbar logo, we're going to go down here and create another div. This will contain the Navbar collapsible item. So Navbar dash, just call it collapse. And within here is where we're going to create our navigational item. So let's create a UL with a class of Navbar dash nav, short for navigation. I'm not going to create too many navigational items in here. I'm just going to create 3. So let's start up with the li, which is going to have a class of nav item, which is going to include a anchor tag with a class of nav dash link. And the very first one of them will have also the class of active. And now I'm going to start copying this 3 more times. You could have also done, we do here a parenthesis, oops, and close this one out and edit again, and times 3, and this will give you 3 times the same navigational item. Now each of them should then lead you to somewhere else, but I'm just going to type in here asterisk and delete the active class. So don't forget to delete the active class, okay? Only the first one should have the active class. Okay, within the anchor tags, we're going to type in here home, and just going to copy and paste the home within each of our anchor tags. Okay, so you should see something like this. So let's replace the second home with about and the very last one with contact. Okay, that's it for navigation. We could now close up our HTML and move on to CSS. First things first, I always do a general reset, so let's select the star selector. Oh, and by the way, for those of you who this seems familiar, yes, it is actually from our advanced HTML, CSS and SAS course, but we did do this component. It was actually a component, this navigation bar, using SAS. This was a reusable component, as you can remember. For those of you who don't know, I'm going to leave a link in the description below. So let's do here general reset. Let's reset our margins. Let's reset them to 0. Let's reset our paddings. Don't want any unnecessary paddings here. I'm also going to change the list items, list style type, and I'm going to set this to none. This is going to remove those disks. And let's also reset the text decoration. Also going to set this to none. I don't want to have any kind of underlines here. Also, the last thing I want to do, any anchor tags, I'm using SAS here. So any anchor tags will have their color as inherit. Okay, so now as you can see, those blue colors are gone because they are now inheriting the default color of the document, which is the HTML document, which is in our case now dark. Now let's also choose a font for our document because I actually don't like this. So let's go with body, font family, and let's go with Roboto and comma sans serif. Of course, if you don't like this font family, you can change it anytime you want. Okay, now we can grab onto our navbar and start styling it. So let's grab onto the navbar class. First thing first, I want to change this background color. So let's go with background color, and let's go here with a hexadecimal number of 1877F2. This should give me a bluish color, which you can't actually see because I forgot to give the navbar a class. So let's go back and do a navbar class, and there we go. And let's move this here. So we have our blue class, blue background here. Let's also give this a white background now. So color, yes, white. Now if this is too white for you, you could also do a DDD, for example, or a EEE. Next, we need to display our navbar as flex. So let's go with display, flex. This is going to flex the 2 items that we have in our navbar. Don't forget, we have actually a navbar logo and a navbar collapse. So this is navbar logo, the name here of the company, let's say, and the navbar collapse is on the right side, having only these 3 items. Now we need to align the items a bit. So let's go ahead and do a justify content center, and let's also align the items to the center. On the bottom part of our navigation, I'm going to add a box shadow. So box shadow. So for the box shadow, we're going to do it 0, 2 pixels, 4 pixels, and a RGBA. Yes, I'm going to use a RGB with an alpha of 0, 0, and 0.1, which is just going to give us a bit of a shadow down here. We can hardly see it, but it's there. It also makes our navigation stand out a bit. In order to create a bit more space in our navigation, I'm going to add a all-around padding of 1. So padding of 1 rem, and this will give us a bit more space in the navigation. Let's actually go with 0.5. There we go. Now one thing I want to avoid having here is a user select. And on Mac, it's actually kind of turned off, but on PC, it's pretty annoying. As soon as you go into, and because I'm on a Mac, it's pretty hard to show you this, because as soon as you go into your page, it will automatically select one item. So I don't want to do that, and this user select is actually going to prevent me from doing that. Now I'm going to do something with our header here. Let's grab onto the header, to the header tag, and let's display this as flex. Let's push the content down. So display flex and flex direction. Let's do it in a column. Flex direction, and should flex in a column. And now let's push it down. So justify content center and align item center. And this should push it to in the center of the page. So align item center, and there we go. And now for its height, let's go ahead and do a height of 30 viewport heights, and this should push this down to have it. And this should push it down, and we can, and this should push it 30 viewports down from the top side. Okay, so we should have something like this. Now also let's take care of the title, because although it's an H1, it's pretty small. Even if I would, I'm actually zoomed in, but if I would be zoomed out, you would see something like this. I'm on a greater resolution. This is why I have to always zoom in a bit. So let's go ahead and select our title class. I think I did give this a title class and a subtitle. Excellent. So title class, and let's increase the font size with 3.5 rem. By the way, in our header, I want to have a text align to the center. So both of them will have a text align to the center. And everything that's in the header, I'm actually going to give it the same color, so not the background color, but the same color as we have for, let's just see how this looks. Yeah, that's awful. Let's go ahead and darken this. Much better. Okay, so it's still a blue color, but it's extremely dark blue color. I could also make it just a bit lighter. And yeah, that's better. Okay, so responsive nav using HTML and CSS and JavaScript. And that's almost it. Let me think about it. Yeah, I'm going to leave it this way. That's all I want to do for now. Okay, moving back to our navigation. Let's now grab onto the logo. So dot navbar and dash logo. This was the class that we gave our logo. First of all, I wanted to occupy the entire width of its container, so width 100%. Then I'm going to display it as flex, because don't forget we have here actually two items within it. So display flex, and again we're going to do the same thing, so justify contents and align items to the center. But actually our justify content I'm going to change now to space between, and this will push our items to the left and right. And this is also the idea here, because when we don't have, I'll just show you this, when we're not going to have our navigation items on the right side, when we're going to be in a phone or a really small screen, then the item to toggle these elements, these navigational links, would be on the right side. And I'm also going to give it now a margin to the right of 0.5 rem. Now let's take care of our brand here. So navbar, actually after our okay, and one last thing, because I also want this to have a bit of space from our right side, actually a bit more space than we just have our padding here. We could give it a margin to the right of 0.5 rem. Okay, you already see it has a bit of a margin now. Now let's go ahead and style our navbar toggler here. So navbar dash toggler. Let's start by adding a bit of a padding to the item, so 0.35 rem to the top and bottom, and 1.25 rem to left and right, and 0.75 rem to the left and right. Let's go ahead and change the cursor to a pointer. So when we're going to be over our navigation, is going to be pointer. Let's trim down the borders a bit. Let's remove the borders by doing a border none. You can always see it shrinking down. Let's add a box shadow now to it to pop out. Box shadow 0. I'm going to use the same box shadow. 0 to 2 pixels, 5 pixels, and a RGBA of 1. And I'm going to increase this to 3. And I also want it when I'm hovering over it. So let's take this, add it down here. Let's add a hover effect to it. And let's remove the box shadow. Let's set it to none. Okay. So when I'm hovering over it, it's going to take out the box shadow. Now, this is happening a bit too fast, so let's go ahead and do a transition of 0.3 seconds and ease. I'm going to copy this transition and add it to the top. Okay, so it's much easier transition. Now let's also trim down the borders a bit by doing a border radius of 0.3 rem. Okay, perfect. So we have our button here. The last thing that I want to do to this button is actually hide it. So I'm going to go up here and let's type in a comment, hide / show navbar toggler and toggler. And this is pretty easy. We're just going to display it as none. And the reason we're doing this is because when we're in a larger screen, we don't want to see that button actually. So we need to hide it until we're going to change the screen size. And we're going to take care of that just in a couple of seconds. The very last thing that I want to add to the navigation, let me comment this out to the navbar toggler. It is a margin left of auto. And this will always keep it on the right side. Okay, now let's hide it. And let's see if we do here a add media and a max width of 768 pixels. Then we should display, wait just a second. Then we should display our navbar toggler as block. So let's take a look at this. If we are at the large screen, then we can see it. And as soon as we reach the 768 pixels, we can hide it. Now, how about the navigation? We actually said that we want to also hide this. So let's go ahead and select our navbar-nav, which is the navigation, which contains the navigational items. And first of all, let's display it as flex. Okay, now they're flexing the row direction. And again, I'm going to use justify content as center and align items as center. And also this will be, let's take care of our screen size here. And now I could actually move it down. Let's move it down underneath our navbar nav. And let's add here another criteria is when the navbar nav reaches this maximal dimension, then we're going to display it as none. Okay, so you can see when we're on a small screen, the button will disappear and the navbar will appear. Okay, next let's add, I'm actually going to make my code editor a bit smaller now so we can see our navigational items. Now let's style our navigational items. So for this we're going to grab onto the navbar, within the navbar to the class of nav-item. I'm just going to add a margin to each of the our items to the right side of 1 rem. So navbar, nav-item, 1 rem, and it didn't work because let me just take a look. Navbar. Oh, I misspelled here. Nab. Why didn't you say that I misspelled it? Boom. Okay, now I also want to have a hover effect on this item. So let's go ahead, copy this, add a hover to it. We're going to add now a opacity of 1. And if you're asking yourself, why am I doing this? It's because actually when those navbar items have also the class of active, then they will have a opacity of 0.8. And actually add it to the nav link. Okay, so this should be up here. Okay, now you can see the difference. So I'm going to change this to opacity 1 when it's active and 0.8 when they're, or should we leave it as 0.5? And now let's go up to our nav items. Let's change this to 1. It's going to copy this opacity, paste it up here, and change this to 1. Okay, so when our navbar item is active, then it's going to have a opacity of 1. When it's not active, then it's going to have opacity of 0.8. And when we hover over it, it's going to have a opacity of 1 again. Okay, let's also add some transitions to this. I'm going to add the same transition as we had up here. So let's just add it at its normal state, at its hover effect, and at its active state. So all around the place. Okay, so we're done with this part. Now I want to be able to show and hide items depending on the screen resolution size. So first things first, I'm going to take the navbar itself. So nav is a class of navbar dot and show. So when the navbar will have the class of show navbar, then it's going to be displayed as flex. We're going to align the items to the flex start. And you're going to see this taking effect just in a couple of seconds. And the flex direction will be, so flex direction will be in a column direction. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the navbar, but nav. So for the navigation itself, I'm going to display it as flex, The alignment of the items will be flex start, flex direction will be column, and I also want to add a gap effect to it. Not an effect, but a gap actually. So a gap of 15 pixels, margin of 15 pixels, and it's going to take up the entire width of its container. And I'm going to comment both of them out, so you will only see the effect when we are now going to switch to JavaScript. So let's switch to JavaScript because here is where all the magic is going to happen. First things first, let's grab onto our navigation. Let's actually check, is our JavaScript hooked up correctly? No, it's not. I can already tell you that it's not hooked up correctly. This is because if I go to console log, I will not see my console log. So we need to add our JavaScript down here before the body tag. And let's say script with the source of nav.js. And there we go. There's our nav console log. So let's switch over to JavaScript and let me move this to the bottom. So let's go down here. Okay, first things first, I'm going to go up here and select our navigation bar. So const and navbar, or let's call this navbar top. Let's go ahead, document query selector, and we're going to select the ID. You could also use select element by IDs, but I'm going to use query selector. So navbar top. Did I name it navbar top? I always need to check. So top nav. Damn it. So top nav. Let's console log our top nav, and we should see our top nav here. Perfect. Nav with a class of nav. Why is it showing me the element itself? Okay. So we got our element here. Now I want to be able to show and hide my navigation depending on the screen size. So first things first, let's take care of the toggle. We have our top navbar selected. Next up, we need our navbar toggler. So const navbar, and we're going to call this navbar and toggler. Again, document query selector, and we're going to select the class this time of navbar-toggler, not goggler, toggler. Okay, let's also console log this. What did I do here? So do in here, and there we go. We have navbar toggler. Next, I need the navbar collapse. So const again, navbar and collapse. Again, document query selector, and let's select our navbar-nav. Now, in order to collapse our navbar, we need to activate our button here. With this selected throughout our navbar toggler, now I could just grab onto it and add an event listener. So add event listener, and we're going to listen for a click. And if we click it, then we're going to use a callback function here. No, nothing there. And just console log click. Okay, so let's see if this works. If I click on this button, it should console log click, click again, click, 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 click. Okay, this is working. So I'm going to comment this out and just leave it in for you to see. So first things first, I'm going to take the navbar collapse and grab onto its class list, and I'm going to toggle the class of show navbar. Okay, so if I click on this, it should show me our navbar. But now we need to go back to our CSS and uncomment both of these. Okay, so now if I click on it, it should show me the navbar. Now I also want to grab onto the navbar from the top, so from the top navbar, and I'm going to also toggle this. Now when this is shown, so when the nav items are shown, I want to change the display direction to a column. So navbar top, class list again, and now we're going to toggle show navbar again. But this time we're going to toggle it on the nav itself. So as you can see, it is displaying in a flex direction now. Now we can toggle it on and toggle it off by simply clicking on it. But I also want to be able to signify that the navbar is opened and that we can close it. So let's change the icon up here. For this, I'm going to use here else if statement. So if the navbar, now we need the navbar icons from up here. So I'm going to go up above my event listener, and I'm going to select from the navbar collapse, select navbar toggler. I'm going to call this icon, and this will be from the navbar toggler. I'm going to use here a query selector in order to select from the navbar toggler only the icon tag, because remember, when we're selecting the navbar toggler, we're actually selecting, let's go back here, we're actually selecting the button. Now I want to go one level down and select the icon. So we can easily do this by, from this selection, from the navbar toggler, selecting the icon tag. So query selector, icon tag, and from it, I'm going to select its class list. Because at the end of the day, we need its class list in order to change it. And we have this open here, no problem. So navbar toggler class list. And now we can, and know what, I'm going to comment this out and first of all console log the navbar icon class list. So check this out. So if we click on a navbar on our toggler up here, it's going to also show us the classes that it contains. So FA solid, FA bars. Okay, we have two classes. Also, if you take a look back in our HTML, you can see FA solid and FA bars. Now we can check if the navbar toggler icon, which has the classes, does contain the FA bars. So if it does contain the FA bars, then we want to remove it. Who would it class? Then we want to, whoa, you should be in here. One wrong parenthesis. Then we want to remove from the navbar togglers by using the remove operator that class. So FA-bars will be removed. And instead of this, we're going to add a F to the navbar toggle class. We're going to add a FA times. Okay, so if we're going to click on it, boom, it's going to remove this class. It's going to add this class, FA times. So we're stuck now with this class. We need to remove it when exactly the opposite thing happens. So else, if it doesn't contain it, I'm just going to copy this and do a switcheroo here, paste this in here, and paste our times up here. So if it does contain FA times, then it's going to remove FA times and add our FA bars again. Ain't that cool? Okay, now we're almost done. We only have one problem. The problem is this, that I can close it up. As you can see, when we are in a large format, it's hiding our close button and the navigation stays open. What we actually want to do is, let me close this one up. If we're in a large format, it should automatically close up. And this is pretty simply done by adding an event listener to the window and listening for a change. So let's go ahead down here and type in here comment, close nav auto. So let's select the window. Let's just see window dot add event listener. And we're going to listen for a resize. And when this resize happens, then we're going to use a callback function. So function, and this function will do the following. First of all, it's going to console log the resize itself. So it's going to console log resize. Just the text of resize. No, not view the source, but I want to view the console. So let's go to the console. Let's start resizing it. Resize, resize, resize is constantly console logging. Now this window also has a property called inner width. So you know what? I'm going to console log here the window dot inner width. For whatever reason, it just added a this here. And now let's see what happens. So we can see it's actually console logging the width of the window. Excellent, because this is exactly what we need. Now let's add it to a window width variable here. So this is going to be equal to this. Now let's add an if statement to it. So if the window width is greater than 768, exactly what we specified here as a media screen, 768. Okay, you don't have to specify pixels because as you saw down here, it's just a number. So we're going to check for this number. Then the navbar collapse dot class list is going to remove the class of show navbar. Remember, we added that class when we were, check this out, when we were in a specific width. Then this class will take effect, okay, because we're adding it up here. Actually, we're adding this class when we're clicking on a button. So after we clicked on our button, this class was added, and now we want to remove it, and this is simply done. As you can see here, the button disappeared because we removed it when the window is larger than this is larger than 768. Now we also want to remove it from our navbar top. So I'm going to just copy this and change this to remove. So this will mean then when, let me open this up again. When I'm in this format and I'm going to enlarge the screen, not only the button will be removed, but also the flex direction column from our navigation items will be removed. Okay? If I go back, then it will give me back my button, my toggler right here. But there's a problem. As you can see, the toggler button remembered that it was open. So it remembered that it changed its class. Now, because the class was changed, we can now go ahead and add another if statement here. So remaining within our if statement, if it's going to check for another thing. If the navbar toggler icons dot contain the class of fa times, because we know that it is open now, then we're just going to do the switcheroo again of removing times and adding bars. Okay, so let's open this. It's opened. Now when I'm going to increase the screen size, it's going to check for two things. Is the screen size larger than this? Yes. Then remove the class from showNav from here and remove the class from showNav from here. And also, if this button contains the fa times, it should remove it and add bars to it. Okay, so let's see if this works. And there we go. Okay, also if I go back, it's going to give me the bars again. Okay, and we're pretty much done with this. Let me close up the console. We're pretty much done with this. Do I have any kind of console logs within here? Yeah, I have this. Boom, I'm going to comment this out. Just like for a bonus, let's also add the class of active, add and remove the class of active from here. And for this, let's go down here, add another comment of add remove class of active. Now this is going to be a bit quicker. I'm just going to do a selection from all of our navigational items. So let's say const nav items, document query selector, and need to select all of them. So query selector all, class of nav dash items. Okay, we're going to add to the nav items a for each first of all. So for each, let's use here callback function. For each nav item, we're going to take each nav item and we're going to add a event listener of onClick. As I said, I'm going a bit quicker here, so if you don't onClick, and this onClick is going to be called by a callback function again, and it's going to do the following things. It's going to check if, not finally, if the nav item dot class list dot contains the class of active, then should be out here. Then the nav item dot class list should remove the class of active, and it should add it. Wait just a second. And it should add it. No, actually, this is wrong. Wait just a second. I should add the class of. Yeah, okay. I should remove it, but this is not how I should remove it. I should remove it from all of them. Don't need the event actually here. So for each nav item, I'm going to add an event of click, and when this click happens, then nav items. Then I'm going to select the nav items again, and for each nav item, I'm going to select each item and just select that nav item and remove the class of active. Okay, so this is the very first thing that we're going to do. This means if I click somewhere, it should remove, wait just a second, nav item, remove active. For each nav item, remove the class of active. Why isn't this working? Okay, so console log. Let me first of all console log all of our nav items. So up here, console log, nav item, not list, nothing. Okay, this is why. Okay, so there we go. We have our nav items. And now if I click on it, it should, item is not defined. Item, console log, item, not you. Okay, so it removed the class of active. And it also removed the items. Should be nav item class list dot remove nav item. Sorry about it. Okay, so if I click on it, it's going to remove. It removed the active class from it. Okay, now we need to add it back in, and this is going to be done by adding here a event and then e.target.classList.add the class of active. Okay, so if I click on about, it should edit, but it doesn't edit because I'm actually clicking on the link. So I need to go ahead and do here e.target.parent element.class list. And now it should edit back in. Okay, and there we go. You could also check it here by moving this to the right side and making this larger again. So it should also work here. Let's go in our body. Let's go to the nav and let's see. We have here our navigation items. See the bottom one has the class of active. You know what? So here, refresh, open this up, body, and stop selecting everything. Body, container, nav collapse, nav items. And now if I start clicking on it, the first one is on the first active is on li home. So if I click on about, it should move it down there and so far and so on. So what this is actually doing, I don't need this. What this is actually doing is checking, first of all, removing checking all of the items, and if there is an active class, then it's removing it. And then adding the active class, sorry about that, to the targeted element. And the targeted element is actually the anchor is the nav link. This is why I messed up at the beginning. I should have left it at the nav link, because we're not selecting the actual li here. We're selecting, when we're clicking on the content here, we're selecting the anchor tag. Okay, so let me just make this larger again. Okay, so this is the project. We can click on our navigational items. It's going to remove and add the class of active to them. If we make this smaller at a specific point, it's going to remove the navigational items. Always make this smaller. We can change this to 400. Then it's going to remove the navigational items, and it's going to add our button, or collapse button. If we click on the button, it's going to open up the navigational items here. If we click and it's also going to change the toggle button. It's going to change this icon. And if we go back here, then it's going to make our navigational items disappear again. Okay, so if we increase the screen size, it's going to make them disappear. So hope you enjoyed the project. If you did, leave a like, leave a comment if you have any kind of questions or suggestions. Subscribe to the channel. Have a lovely day and catch you on the flip side. Bye-bye.